PowerPoints we're presenting. If you don't have, I have it somewhere.
So
Okay.
This is the full document right here. Trying to think if I can get rid of my thing so I can read it, but there's a guidebook for each cycle. So this one's for cycle 1, and if we just look at the table of contents, it's for you to go through and take your time going through, but it talks about the 4 steps to submitting it: the planning, the teaching and assessing, the reflection, and the apply step. Probably the biggest things that you want to take away are looking at the rubrics. The rubrics and the evidence under each step will allow you to see how they're grading you and what they expect for you to submit for each of the rubrics. And I think if we go to the PowerPoint, it'll show an example of one without us getting into too much detail in here, but know that this sort of assessment guide is your go-to. If you need and have any questions about what you're supposed to do and you can't get a hold of a faculty member, it's all there. It tells you what they expect and how they're grading you and exactly what you need to submit. So it's very prescriptive. There are no surprises. Everyone who turned in their CalTPA in the spring had a lot of success if they just stuck to going right down the chart and saying, yep, they want to see this, tick, and including it. There's no tricks to this one.
It's laid out very clearly for you.
It is. So, I don't know if we want to walk. We'll go through this one.
Yep. Is that that's the one, the first one? Yeah.
Yeah, this is it.
Okay.
So everybody can see it okay? Yeah.
You can move your people
I can move
on the side if you need to. If they need to move, I'm going to move mine up.
Move my people. All right. So cycle 1, it's all about planning, teaching and assessing the lesson that you plan, reflecting on what you taught, and then based on how it went, applying it. Go ahead.
Before there's any confusion, our cycle 1 is going to be on math because it's going to say in the instructions, math or literacy. Math or, is it literacy, Tim?
Yeah, so, language arts, literacy. Yeah.
Language arts, math or language arts. We are going to do cycle 1, just to clarify, in what? Math. Math, okay. And that's how it will be for term 2s right now. We are actually getting a head start, and your module 13 book would be 13. You guys gotta help me, term 2s.
Yes.
Is not ready. And for term, no, I'm sorry, that's term 3's. Term 3's module 13, term 2's is module 11. Somewhere 9, somewhere in there, I don't know, can't remember. But the books are not ready. Jessica, you know what book it is?
It's 10.
Okay, so 10 is not going to be ready.
Or 11, I guess, because I think it's CalTPA Cycle 1 is 11.
Okay, so just note that you're going to get your resources from the TPA Center, that the books are not ready. I checked tonight, and they're not ready for you guys. They will be. Okay, go ahead, Tim, sorry.
Oh, no, that's all right. So instructional cycle 1, it's all about learning about your students and planning instruction. And a lot of things will be repetitive between cycle 1 and cycle 2 at the start. But the very first section, which we will sort of send you off with homework, is step 1, planning. And we'll look at the templates in a second. But it says what you need to do. You need to gather contextual information, including students' assets and needs, so what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are for the whole class and for each of your 3 focus students. And that's the highlight of this cycle, is that you are going to pick 3 focus students to really drill down on. You're going to use the state standards. I mean, we can all read this. Explain how the lesson plan addresses each of the learning needs of your students that you've picked. Provide key instructional resources and or materials related to the lesson plan, the materials, the graphic organizers, slides, etc. And then over here on the far column, you'll see exactly what they want you to submit. You're going to have a written narrative, getting to know your students, up to 5 pages. You're going to include a lesson plan. You're going to have another written narrative about why you did what you did in your lesson plan. And then your related instructional resources and materials you can attach up to 8 pages worth. Kelly, you thinking there's any need to go into step 2? I think we just stop at step 1.
We're going to stop at step 1 because I think it will get, this is your evidence kind of sheet, this one. So I always look at what do I need to submit. And Tim just went over on the right-hand corner what you need to submit. Remember that this is like the UDL, the what of learning, the how of learning, and the why of learning that you're giving these lessons. So if you can keep that in the back of your mind, that will be helpful. Yeah, I think we just do the plan tonight and we'll be good to go.
Perfect. So step 1, the plan, you're going to, again, gather the information, and we'll look at one of the templates real quick that you're going to fill out for step 1 and for cycle 1 and cycle 2, but see if it pops up here. This is what a template looks like. Each one of the templates that you have for each step is going to have these brackets there. So prior academic knowledge related to the specific content you plan to teach. Big key, there are brackets for a reason. Do not delete those brackets. Do not. You are only to type in between them. And if you delete them, it is going to come problems for you when it comes to grading. So there are brackets under each section that you need to fill in. Also tells you that you need to include information when you see those brackets, but you simply type in between those and you save it, and you're going to submit each step individually. Anything to add there, Kelly?
I think that some of their, I'm not sure what module it was that they did their classroom ecosystem, and some of this information was already gathered. They may have done it, and they may have it somewhere else, and they can look through it. But also, if they Googled this, they gave them a link to Google that gives them all of this information on some of it, but most of it you're going to get from, if you are a student teacher, make sure you're going to your mentor teacher and including them in this process. It's very important that your master teacher or your mentor teacher knows what you're doing so they can provide this type of information if you're not in your own classroom.
But the template is very descriptive. It tells you exactly what they want. I mean, grade level, content area, classroom setting, resources, and all you're going to do is walk through this template for step 1 and put the details in there. I think since we're here, we can talk about the 3 focus students that you're going to need to identify for this cycle. So focus student 1, actually, is it going to be better in this? Might be better over here.
Yeah, let's check and see.
So we go through here. So step, the plan, mathematics plan based on the California state standards.
Okay. She didn't put it in there like that.
No, she didn't. But this, I think, talks about the plan itself. So you can see the scoring here, 1 through 5. 2 is passing for all of the rubrics that you'll see for the CalTPA. We want to shoot for a 5, so jump over that far right-hand column whenever you're going to submit something and try to make sure you're reaching all of that. And then if for some reason something's missing, it'll knock you down. But 2 is what is passing.
If you guys can't see, you know how to move your people, right? So you guys can read the rubrics. Okay. I wonder if should we go back to the 3 focus students? Is that going to be?
It's going to come up here because they're going to walk through them all. The 3 focus students are right here.
I didn't remember where it's at. Okay.
Yeah. So for cycle 1, when you go through the template, you have to focus on 3 students. So your first student is going to be someone that's been identified as an English language learner. If you do not have one that's identified as an English language learner in your classroom, select a student who was redesignated recently, or select a student who needs support for his or her language development. So there is a catch-all there that, it really allows you just to focus on a student who is struggling with English language. So that's going to be the focus for 1 student. And here is the rationale and the essential question: how does the candidate plan instruction using knowledge of focus student 1, the English learner's assets and needs, to support meaningful engagement with the content-specific lesson goals? And then it tells you how to meet either a level 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Again, always looking to
5.
shoot for level 5. And then down here, it's going to show the evidence that you would be including: your written narrative, your lesson plan, your written narrative about how the lesson plan, why you did what you did, and then related instructional resources and materials that you might have used to, this is where the UDL is going to come in if you're using visuals, audio, and whatnot to help support this student. So all of that you would be allowed to attach. Then your second student is going to be a student that's been identified by the district or school with an IEP, a 504 plan, or a student identified for GATE. Similar to that, you're going to have a nice rubric that talks about all the ways in which you're supporting this student. And again, they're going to go into the details of the narrative, the lesson plan, and obviously it's going to be one lesson plan and how are you breaking it down for each of these three students. And then your final student that you'll focus on for this cycle will be a student who's had a life experience either inside or outside of school that may result in a need for additional academic and or emotional support. And this is, any student can fall in this, but you can see challenges in the home, community, or school as a result of illness, loss of parents, divorce, trauma, bullying, homelessness, poverty, incarceration, or a result of their needs as a standard English learner, a migrant student, a self-identified LGBTQ student, or a student in foster care. So they're really looking for any student who has something going on in their life which is impacting their ability to learn. And how are you going to address their academic and emotional needs?
The first cycle is in math, but it's really based off of your focus students. That's the whole thing. So cycle 1's on focus students and cycle 2 is on assessment. So
Yeah.
this is for 3 focus students. This shouldn't be hard for you to find any of these. And if you're having a hard time figuring this out, like you need help with your focus students, we'll help you kind of work through that if you need our advice, or like I said, if you have a mentor, if your student teacher, actually you're going to work with your mentor for these 3 focus students that you need.
And then again, here's the sort of support and evidence that you need to provide for focus student 3. And then providing key instructional resources and or materials. So this, example of that would be your graphic organizers, slides, support documents, any educational technology. I believe it's going to be in cycle 2, and I've talked about it with my candidates, is some component of your lesson plan or video that you choose to show is going to actually have to show the students using technology, not just you using technology to present something, but the students actually using technology. So start to think about that. If you don't have technology in your district, you simply need to write a really good lesson plan showing how they would be using technology. You're going to write it as if they're doing it. They just may not show up in your video, but what they want to know is that you're thinking about how technology is used in the classroom.
Cycle 2, if we do not show that evidence of that, it's a no pass. Casey Fair said it's not going to be a passing one.
Yeah.
So
and there are a lot of schools that don't have technology, but they want to know that you can clearly think about, hey, if you take the next job down the line and you walk into a room that's loaded with iPads, Chromebooks, etc., you know how to use them, and so your lesson plan should speak to that. Evidence to be submitted for this first step: a written narrative of getting to know your students. It can be up to 5 pages, doesn't have to be 5 pages, but it's going to be all the contextual information about your class. Again, describing their strengths and weaknesses as a whole class, not just an individual, and then describing in specific about your 3 focus students. You're going to use a lesson plan. You can use the Cal State Teach lesson plan format that we have in our, if you're in the 2.0, you could use the LPA format, or if you're in 3.0, you could use the format in the iSupervision or a district provided one, right, Kelly?
I think so, but I'm thinking that I ran through some of the resources and I thought I saw one provided in the CalTPA, in the TPA Center. So you guys can, I'll look for that. I'll write that down to look for the lesson plan. So it's like a lesson plan assistant. So even though you're doing this wonderful lesson, of course, it has to be has to be typed up. Your lesson has to be written up. I think they are providing one this time, Tim. I think I saw it, but I'll look for it.
Yeah. And then your lesson plan rationale. I think I have the rationale. See if it pops up. So here's a lesson plan rationale that you're going to go through if we zoom in on it. This is just talking about why you went through. So explain how the lesson plan builds on students' prior academic knowledge related to content-specific learning goals selected. And you're going to walk through and fill this out for your lesson plan. So this is showing them that you've thought in detail about why you chose to use this lesson plan. So you're going to complete one of those for it.
And I think if you take a look at that, that'll help you get started on what you're going to be teaching and recording. I mean, that's important for you to.
I think I just lost my.
Oh, was that the rationale one?
I think that was it. That's the last slide. So
that was it.
So that was the rationale, but I mean, it is a template. You just need to go through. It's included in the documents in your TPA, but that's going to be one of the things that you submit is completing that. And then the last part is just, again, uploading any instructional resources or materials that you think they should see that you used. Go ahead.
You know, before I forget, we have some extended supervision people that we wanted to talk to them about tonight about doing the CalTPA. You guys are paying for your CalTPA. Are we aware of that? Yes, Dr. McConaughey, that's correct. You pay for it.
As far as I know, they were looking for funding to see if they could help everybody out. But at this point, yeah, everybody's paying for the CalTPA, but they're not done looking for money. I know that. There was
on the CalTPA. How many of you have registered? I can ask that real quick. How many of you have already registered? You can just undo your mic and say I have, or
I have not.
Okay. There is a if you're not familiar with the website, you can go to the TPA Center as well, and it will be $150, I believe, for the first cycle 1, and then cycle 2 is $150. And Tim, the dates that we handed out on earlier that I sent our candidates was sent to us is incorrect. So I'll share my screen with those submission dates. There are 2 different submission dates with return scores on the same dates. So we want to take a peek at those because the return scores are like in December. So you have to be thinking ahead. Like if I submit this, it's returned here, the term is over, I need to be credentialed by. So that's kind of where you're on your own with the submission dates, I would say. I think the first one we had was October. Let me share that real quick. I just took a screenshot of let me see if I can find it. Sorry. I took a screenshot of move you guys down, of the submission. Here we go. So let's take a peek at the submission dates. This is from the website. This is a CalTPA score. So it says submit your cycle. Here's also, you do not submit yours on this date. It is 5 days prior. Does that make sense? Because Casey Fair had told us that if you're all submitting by 11:59 p.m. that night, you will not get anything uploaded. It will just be jammed with everybody trying to do the same thing that you're doing. So say it's October 25th, maybe shoot for Tim. Would you say 5 days? Casey Fair said 5 days, but that seems like a lot.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, I think we won't know until the first one goes, but I'll say during the trial run, it did take some of them a good 2 to 3 days to get it up, depending on what time of the day they started and if everybody else decided to submit that time. So
it was rough. I know
people up and down the state will be anxiously there. I would say go 5 days because the test has been on hold. People are really anxiously awaiting to submit here for the CalTPA because it hasn't been available since April. So I imagine there will be a lot of people for that first submission date trying to access the system.
So October 25th, results coming back on the 29th. And I wanted to show you, if you submit on the 15th or the 29th, it doesn't matter. It comes back on December 20th. And I asked Casey if that was a typo. She said it's not. The reason why is they plan that way. If you look at the time frame between, there's that 2-week period of they're getting in people to correct. That's why a new cycle of people to grade these. So that's why there's a lapse between November 15th and November 29th. There's no submissions in between there. So if you think about it, think about your Christmas. That's what I think. Think about, working all the way I guess, getting things done before Thanksgiving, not Christmas, but getting results back. It doesn't matter if you submit on the 15th or the 29th, you're going to get them back December 20th. But the likelihood of that, if you're term 3, I would not submit on November 29th. That's kind of running it late because now the term is over on December 7th and you're waiting. Does that make sense to you guys? You're waiting for your credentials. And now you've put yourself into where no one's even in the office because it's Christmas time. So you want to make sure that I think I would shoot for October 25th and November 15th as a solid deadline for you guys. Do you have any advice on that, Sonia or Tim?
I would definitely just, what credential you're on. If you're on a PIP, a STIP, or if you're on the candidates that are on a university intern credential, these dates are really important to you because if you need to have your credential in hand when January starts up, otherwise you're going to have to re-enroll in a supervisory course in order to keep that intern credential, which is going to be an additional $1,958, I think. So if you're on a university intern credential and you need to pass before, just check out those submission dates and make sure you get it in there so that you don't have to enroll in that 4th term. If you're not on a university intern credential, then you're just under the rules of your own credential, whether it's a STIP or a PIP or whatnot.
Are there any, we're just going to share exactly what we're doing each week with you guys. And this is your Q&A time. If you have questions that you want to ask, we'll try to get to all of them. Our group is going to be fairly big, about, did you say 30, Tim?
Yeah, I think there are about 30 to 35 teacher candidates. So we only have 13 on, 10 of us, 3 of us are faculty, but so there are 10 on, but there'll be quite a few that we're waiting for the video.
I also wanted to share that other faculty, like you have friends in the program, they're not starting theirs tonight. We are jump starting and working through the modules simultaneously, because if we do not get started, then you won't have the opportunity to get this done in time. And so you'll be working, I think there's on the pacing guide or the timeline due dates, there is a stoppage kind of a thing point, but module 15 is on social studies and then module 16 is on following a student. That's going to get done. But we need to be working. And like I told my candidates, you're going to have to hold a lot of hats this time. And this is a big sacrifice, and you'll get through it because it's straightforward and you'll get it done. So we're going to not worry about everybody else where they're starting at and just worry about where our group is starting at and then moving forward from there.
So what would you say in preparation for next Monday, would we want to have identified our 3 focus students?
That would be their homework, that they have that done already.
So I would think that you would want to identify your 3 focus students and start working on your overall, start completing that template about the total picture of your classroom, not down to the individuals, just identify those focus students, and we'll start to work through it, and we can answer questions next Monday on how it's going. We can only give so much support. We can't tell you what to write, but we definitely can give you feedback on what you're writing and if you're going down the right path. So, we're very appreciative that you take the time out of your evening to join us, and we hope that it's helpful. But our biggest reason for starting now is we want this to be stress-free. We want you to have plenty of time to think about it, to look at the templates, to look at the evidence that's required, and be able to submit it without having to stress. So when you get to that October 25th submission date, that you're ready and you're not trying to cram it in there, because some people will be trying to cram it in there, and it's not an assessment you want to cram in. Your credential's writing on it. So you might as well take the time and prepare adequately. And we think that, we were really successful in the spring. So we everyone that submitted and followed the instructions out of our group last time all passed. So we have high hopes that everybody will pass again. We had 2 that didn't, but they ended up submitting 2 math or 2 language arts instead of following the instructions. So anybody who followed the instructions and worked with us in the spring, they all passed. So we hope to have the same 100% pass rate this time.
I'm sure you will. I think they'll do a great job. I think just you're going to have to find a balance, because everybody is super busy and we all understand that. So find that balance for you. try to chip away at it every day, something every day, something little every day, and just keep chipping away at it, because there's a lot of documents and most of the stuff is basically it's typing it up. What you want to not do is kind of push forward and say, tomorrow I'm doing this great math lesson, I'm going to record it. I don't recommend that. I don't think Dr. McConico recommends that, or Sonia, because you haven't looked at what the requirements you need for before you record. So what do you think? I think that's...
No, I think that's good. Does anyone have questions before we end tonight's meeting? Our goal is not to take any more time away from you than what's required to get through it. But does anyone have questions before we say goodbye? Going once.
Come on. Jessica, Devin, I'm going to call you guys out. Is there anything that you guys, are we feeling like completely overwhelmed, or?
Well, I'm just
Yes.
a little confused with the timeline. So
Okay.
I'm in term 2. So
Yeah.
am I doing all my module work plus studying for my recap plus this?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Here's what's going to happen. Let me talk about the term 2s, and then Dr. McConaughey, you can help me out with that.
Sure.
The reason we invited our term 2s is we wanted you not to be in the dark about this. And so when November comes around, you will probably have this partially or almost done. Your part, term 2s, you are not supposed to submit anything, but you can start working on it with the knowledge of following along. So cycle 1 is going to be submitted in this term for term 2s, because it was not done this way, planned this way for term 3s, because the templates were not available. So Jessica, yes, you'll be working on RECA. And like we said, it's your last module is going to be CalTPA, but we want to invite you to at least the first 2 meetings, so that you can get a handle on, okay, I'm going to do cycle 1 and now I'm ready to go. We probably will not host, it just depends, another meeting to go over all of these documents for term 2s. We're trying to avoid that and get everybody in together at the same time. For term 2s, does that make sense?
So our deadline for the math TPA cycle 1 is still in November.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you come to the meetings, I think, and you have questions now, I really hate to wait till November, because we're done December what? 7th?
Yeah, it's
And
December
so if you-
2nd, and our module 11 starts the 23rd. So
Yeah. So week 13. So you have 2 weeks. It's only giving you 2 weeks to
so
think
we're
about
working
this.
on this. Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I think it's better that way. Let me tell you why, because term 3s have a ton of work. And so they're going to be feeling very overwhelmed trying to do cycle 1 and 2. Tim, cycle 1 is not a huge deal, I don't think. It's 1 math lesson. So
and cycle 2 is the same. I mean, it's all if you bite it off in chunks, it's all easy to do. If you wait till the very end and you have to shoot video and have really good video, you're going to be in trouble. So
I don't expect my candidates in term 2, and I think Tim's the same way, and Sonia, to start this like I'm asking my term 3s to start. I want term 2s to just be familiar with it, and then we can look at a start date, because your start date is November, but I wanted you to not be in the dark. I want you to get your documents that you need from the TPA Center, and I think, Dr. McConico, you dropped them in the chat?
yeah, they're in the chat form, but I'm going to email them out when I send the link to the video.
I don't see them in the chat for me. It's blank in my chat form. Anybody see them in the chat?
You guys are talking about the TPA Center. You're saying we go to like resources under that main button, and then we go
Yes.
to the TPA Center from there, and then we see all the templates.
Yes. Dr. McConico will email them out to you.
Okay.
And you can get it either way. But what I want is you guys to come to this meeting and to the next meeting, so that you're aware. We'll, of course, go through this again in term 3 all over again with you. But we're going to assume that you're listening, so that we can get things started in November and not be lost in November.
Right. I mean, I'd rather do it now.
Yeah. Nobody,
Yeah.
Are there questions from term 3s? Really? Everyone wants to start?
Can it easily be done in those 4 weeks where our other module work is kind of paused?
It's about a 6-week, Tim, if you want to call it that. Let me just give you a little something. The last term 3s did EdTPA, which was huge, and worked through all the modules. They did. Nothing gets adjusted, nothing gets left off. It's still curriculum that has to get done. It's very, but if you wait Like, I think you can do it in 4 weeks. I don't know, Tim, what do you think? A week for...
Yeah, if you focused on it, you could do it. You know, the more time you have when you go to shoot your videos, if something doesn't work out or some little kiddo goes a little squirrely on you during your video and you're like, hey, I want to reteach that lesson so that I could film and get good quality video, you know, you just start to lose the time to do stuff like that. But I mean, in 4 weeks, yeah, they did cycle 2. I mean, they did cycle 2 last year in 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks once we came back from into the new term. So it's possible, but you just start crunching that timeline and things happen.
So is there only 4 weeks on our calendar, Kelly? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So there was a suggestion that also we only take 1 week to do module 16. We kind of push things back, and we'll have to take a look as a group, but I know that you guys can push through and do a little chip away a little bit. Module 15 is all about social studies and creating like 3 lessons in a unit.
Yeah.
It's very big.
And they added that October 25th date because that wasn't even on the initial discussion. So I wouldn't even be thinking about submitting on the 25th of October. I mean, I would be giving yourselves to the November 15th was supposed to be the first time they were taking any of them. So I'd be looking at the 15th or the end of November as your submission date. That's going to give you enough time to get it done. And that's what originally was talked about. The CalTPA just threw in that 25th date. So that's new. And that is a short timeline to try to turn this all around by the end of next month.
I think they could do.
You could do it.
Cycle 1 could be done. I think it could be done. Like I said, you will be working. There's nothing that we can do. I've already asked, can we trim some curriculum? Can we cut some things? No, that's not part of the program. So they want to have you guys have a balance between teaching module work and your CalTPA, and it's doable. So you're going to have to set aside some time every weekend, every evening to work on this. And like Dr. McConico said, it's super doable. It's not like it's hard to understand and everything is right there and clean. So the first thing you want to do for homework is you're going to work on your 3 focus students and have that by the time we meet next week, that section to be typed and filled out. And also
the strengths and weaknesses of the whole class that you're working with.
And make sure that assessment guide, you don't delay reading that. It's 70 something pages. It's not a hard read. We are going to go over it, but what I suggest is you go over it. The assessment guide is much better now because last time it didn't say which cycles to do which. They gave the candidate the option. And so that's how our candidates got confused and did 2 language arts and 2 math because they didn't catch that. Because it didn't say it stated out. They could do either or in each cycle. But for cycle 1, it's math so that we know. And then cycle 2 is the language arts section. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So cycle 1 is math, and that's mapped out appropriately. I get that. You were talking about social studies. Is that mixed in with ELA? And then the submission dates is like the October 25th, the submission for math, and then November 15th is supposed to be the submission for the ELA.
It's up to you. So Devin, if you're not like, you're telling yourself, nah, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to get that first. You can submit both of them at the same time, right, Dr. McConico? It doesn't matter. I just say not to do that because now you're uploading videos here and you're uploading the other videos here if you can. What I'm saying is module 15 starts in the next 4 weeks. So.
And module 15 is the social studies you're talking about.
Yes, and we also talked about, Tim, I don't know if you're aware of this, if they could use some of those social studies for CalTPA, so far as their literacy. So if that's something that we can double up on, we might be able to do that.
You can use, when it comes to the literacy language arts side for the CalTPA, you can do it in any subject area you want.
Except for math.
But you have to clearly make it known that you are measuring this standard on English language arts. So it may be a science lesson, but I am assessing and drilling down on this English language arts standard, and that's really the focus of it. I'm just teaching it through science. it's a dangerous thing to go down if you're not going to be super clear about it. That's why they suggest that you just teach a language arts lesson. But if you do a social studies lesson or a science lesson, as long as it's just clear as day that I am measuring this language arts standard, then you can do that.
That's where we had talked about, like, because you guys are doing so much work in social studies. I think, Devin, since you do language arts, period, it should just be language arts.
Most of my language arts is blended with my social studies because those are the two subjects I teach. And they give me like 45 minutes for social studies and an hour and a half for ELA. So like when we go into Greek mythology, for example, and they read Percy Jackson, they're writing a personal narrative about their adventure they go on with Percy Jackson. It's an ELA lesson, but it gets kind of blended in with social studies just because I don't have a whole lot of time with it. So that's kind of where I'm at.
That's perfectly fine. Just, when it comes down to doing the lesson plan, and when we get to cycle 2, it'll be very specific. Just as long as everything is all focused on language arts, we can teach it through any subject matter. So
we're highlighting the comprehension, highlighting the writing skills, highlighting the vocabulary, all of that to be highlighted. And I think Devin, that might be a good avenue for you to go. Are there any other questions? This is not to make you feel overwhelmed. This is to make you feel more relaxed because other groups are not starting for 2 weeks. We don't want to do that to you because some people are like, where's cycle 1? And I will be there to take a glance at your things, and Dr. McConaughey will be working with his to take a glance at your things. There's a certain amount of feedback we can give. We can't say this is, junk, scrap it, do it over again. We can point you and tell you're in the right direction or not. There's a script for us. I haven't really looked at it yet. Have you looked at that?
Oh, no.
What we can say or not say, but we are supposed to be supporting you, and this is through the entire process. So
awesome. Well, thank you guys very much for joining us. We'll hit end. We'll end the recording.